Good morning to you. You. Good morning. Good morning to you. You. Good morning. Good morning. Won't you share with a friend or two? Good morning. Good morning to you. You. Good morning. Good morning to you. Well, it has been a wild weekend as we closed off here in the United States. We closed off our weekend with a coup underway in our government. And you know what? Aside from calling our elected officials to get them to stop it, there's not really much we can do. We can organize, we can go out in the streets and protest, and we can call on our elected officials to do what they're supposed to do. And so, if you have done those things, if you are organizing, if you are taking care of your family, that's pretty much what you can do at this moment. It is Black History Month, and so we are going to celebrate our history and our heritage. And as I said, this week we're going to be reading, and really for February, we're going to be reading from two books. One is called I Can't Wait to Call You My Wife, African American Letters of Love and Family in the Civil War Era, and Black Love Letters, which is a collection of words and letters and encouragement to the Black community. So you're either here to join in our Blackity Black History Month in time, or you're not. Those are the two options. But I hope that you will stay around and tune in for some wonderful reading. We are going to start with our motivation today, and that is there's a reason for everything. This statement is taken, the statement I'm getting ready to read is taken from Johnny Coleman. Excuse me. And the subject is there's a reason for everything. He says, I am now on the road to success, happiness, and abundance. All traffic goes my way. Johnny Coleman. Do you ever wonder what you are doing here? Have you ever pondered if you have a purpose for living? Do you believe in destiny? And if there is a plan for your life, where did it come from? You do have a purpose here, and it is a good one. Your sojourn has not been cast upon you by some outside agent who dispassionately chooses your fate. You choose your mission in life, and you will live it. Gwendolyn Brooks, the widely read educator and poet, wrote words that would give anyone pause. She said, I believe the purpose of life is to give us a greater realization of spiritual consciousness, something broader and more meaningful than materialism. None of us knows what lies ahead. The important thing is to use today as wisely as possible and face tomorrow eagerly and cheerfully, knowing that we will be equal to the task. The goal of life is to find your life's purpose and thus light a path for future generations that would guide men and women toward the treasures that really matter: peace of mind, health and energy, loving relationships, financial independence, a sense of personal fulfillment, and worthy goals and ideals. We cannot help but notice the two parallel themes that border all of life. The first is that you can achieve as much success as you desire, providing you are willing to combine your natural God given talents with newly acquired knowledge and are determined to pay the price for success. The second is that there will be no success without a purpose. Today's affirmation says, I will be pleased with what I accomplished today and be mindful of my goals. And I want to tell somebody right now that if your goal is simply to stay in the right frame of mind, to stay in a healthy frame of mind, to make sure that you are at peace so that you can calmly think and that your mind is not flooded and that you're not becoming anxious about what is happening that is beyond your control. If that is your simple goal for today, then do that goal for today. Don't let anything, and I do literally mean anything, don't let anything pull you out of the space in the place where you can think clearly, right? Because there's again a lot happening in our world that right now is really out of our control. But what are you in control of today? You are in control of yourself. And so I like to tell people bring yourself from the macro to the micro. Think about what it is that you can control within your realm, within your sphere of influence, and work on those things. Now, let's hop into this book, Black Love Letters. Very, very, I really like it. I like the cover. I like the cover design. And there's the interior. When you consider the history of our people, the strife and adversity we've experienced and overcome, love seems like an almost illogical ambition of an act of resistance. We smile despite circumstance. We have the audacity to create ebullient, unapologetic art despite the world often telling us our lives don't matter. What could be braver? In this anthology of letters and illustrations, Cole Brown and Natalie Johnson bring together a constellation of influential figures to write to the people, places, and moments that mean the most to them. Black Love Letters is an ode to a phenomenal community, a testament to the fact that where there has been pain and suffering, there has also always been immeasurable, irrepressible joy and love. So we're going to get right into it. This book is dedicated to all of us and to every ounce of our lives that is deserving of love. This first writing is from Jamila Woods to Joyce Seta. And the sections of this book, they have several sections. The first section is care, then awe, then loss, ambivalence, and transformation. So we'll read this first one. Introduction. And there is the lovely image. When Darnella Frazier paused on the corner of 38th and Chicago Ave, she witnessed a white police officer violently rob a black man of his life. The images of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin with his knee on George Floyd's neck were burned into the conscience of a generation. At 17 years old, Darnella became a national hero. Her presence of mind to capture those 9 minutes and 26 seconds produced the definitive evidence that would put that same officer behind bars. Without her video, the world would have known nothing more than what was concealed in a benign police report saying, man dies after medical incident during police interaction. And Derek Chauvin would have literally gotten away with unaliving. But watching those minutes cost her. A part of my childhood was taken from me, she wrote, on the 1 year anniversary of George Floyd's death. The violence undoubtedly cost us too. The sight of Black death on repeat across social media and the news left many traumatized and weary. Everyone I know is just so tired, Jenna Wortham wrote in the aftermath of 20-year-old Dante Wright's unaliving in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, mere miles from the Derek Chauvin trial that was underway. Nothing explained the ubiquity of that trauma more than Darnella's testimony during the trial. She said, when I look at George Floyd, I look at my dad, I look at my brothers, I look at my cousins, my uncles, because they're all black. she told the jury while fighting back the tears. I look at that video and I look at how that could have been one of them. We did too. We were among the weary. Like so many others, we listened to the constant drumbeat of Black Death from the shut in rooms of COVID lockdowns. Natalie in New York, Cole in Sydney, Australia. We scrolled our timelines, watched the shared videos of the robbery, prayed that this precious life lost would be the last, and clenched our fists in the face of continued disappointment. We stayed attuned to the violence in hopes of saving each other and in some ways saving ourselves. Black Love Letters was born in that moment, in Natalie's heart and of Natalie's grief. She sought collective healing, a site for our people to come together on the deepest, strongest emotion we share, a place to exhibit the side of ourselves that wasn't so tainted by pain, a way to replenish the soul. She reached out to her creative friends and asked that they send love letters to the people, places, and things that meant the most to them, a small request born of big feelings. Cole was one of the first people she called. We were longtime friends and short-time collaborators. The project had the desired effect for us personally. It gave us a place to set our minds beyond the reach of tragedy. We stumbled upon something subtle and profound. Communal pain provides the possibility for shared deliverance, the possibility to carve out a space for healing together, a possibility powered by Black love, which has powers both awesome and unique. It invites the soul forward and nourishes it. In a country that so often tries to degrade us, to use us for its labor, to harm us, Black love has always responded with force. As early as the 17th century, enslaved Africans forged bonds on slave ships traveling between West Africa and the Caribbean, resisting the commodification of their stolen bodies. Omasike Natasha Tinsley, a scholar of the Black diaspora, writes that it is through this history that the Creole word mati finds its meaning. Figuratively, mi mati is my girl, but literally it means mate, as in shipmate, she who survived the Middle Passage with me. From the earliest examples to today, Black love has always been defined by its devotion, care, and intimacy, but also its resistance, its unwavering ability to persist in a world that would rather quash it. It is for this reason we've gathered this collection of Black love stories. We reserve this space for our humanity in all of its fond, ironic, elated, grief stricken, confused glory. In the following pages, you will find letters crafted by activists, statesmen, writers, artists, poets, and creators, all reflecting on what it means to be Black, to love, and to be loved in America. Treat it like a sack of ribbon tied letters on your doorstep. Read it in any order. Base it on what you need today. Dog ear it, sticky note it, come home to it. Return to it again and again when you need a little understanding. Write your own and pass it on. When you find yourself alone and downtrodden, when the news is just too much, return to these pages. This one is for you. For Joycetta by Jamila Woods. This is a letter for you, Grandma J. Published in a book you may or may not ever read, seeing it's not the Bible. I can hear your voice in my head saying, when will this child write something about herself for a change? Quit putting my name in all of this stuff. I can see the hint of a smile on your face as you say it too. The smile that makes me think you secretly like being the sun in my universe, even if our orbits don't intersect as often as you'd like. Everything my grandma says is a poem. She is the top line writer, and I am the singer with no stories of her own. Every story I own is a hand me down, except for the ones that my Uber drivers, I suppose. I paid for those. Here is your story as I remember it. When you were a little girl, you lived in Wapaseka, Arkansas. You were the youngest of seven children. You picked cotton in the fields with your oldest brother, James. You picked 200 pounds of cotton a day. There was no electricity, no running water to make a bath. In the summer, you filled a tub of water from the well and waited for it to get hot. In the winter, you collected rainwater and heated it in a pot on the stove. Your parents were strict. They had to be. There were no telephones, but you could hear your mother calling you from 5 miles away. In my worst dreams, Grandma Splinters says I never visit, says I quit LaSalle Street, gave up grilled cheese on Wonder Bread, dropped out of Sunday school, forgot dishes in the sink, flew off. I know. I'm always leaving for somewhere, traveling home from some place. I know it's too much to keep track of. I'm ashamed that I write metaphors about you more often than I call. When I do visit, I wonder if you can tell I'm trying to remember everything you say and do, taking voice memos, recording videos of you cooking recipes you never wrote down. I'm stocking up on memories and fear I won't have enough time to unlock them all. I'm embarrassed of the ways I've started to grieve you before you're even gone. Poetry is all about economy and fit. Grandma has a shortcut grace for when she's hungry. Jesus wept. Grandma never wastes anything. Her pantry is full of exactly enough. In quarantine, I call to ask if I can order her anything. She says, if I don't have it, I don't need it. My cousins and I beg you to take us on a trip to Wabaseka. You insist there's nothing there. The house is gone. You wouldn't know the people. It's too hot. You say, you crazier than a Bessie bug. Joycetta, queen of idioms most people have never heard. When I researched your words, I found out that a best beetle is a cousin of the scarab beetle, native to Arkansas. They live inside rotten logs and slowly eat them from the inside out. They live in adult pairs with their dozens of kids, often taking care of their offspring, even after they grow into adults. Apparently, this two parent household lifestyle is rare for insects. Unusual for sure, but which part of this is crazy exactly? By this logic, you are crazy too, Grandma. You are raising me even now. You are the third parent in our now splintered household. It was never really about Black Jesus, no offense. It was the car rides in Grandma's Dodge Dynasty. It was the home cooked meals and the red punch in the church basement. After service, I'd check my face in the mirror, count how many red lips dap my cheekbones, look how big I'm getting, and don't I look just like Joycetta, especially in the eyes. It was the odd comfort of being in a room full of people who knew my history before I learned their names, who already loved me because I belonged to her. In one recording I took, it's your birthday, and we're all going around saying things we love about you. My sister, the heavy sleeper, describes your style of parenting as tough love. She remembers how you used to wake her up by pinching her nose shut so as to make sure she wouldn't be late to school. Another sibling says, you always pick up the phone. My youngest sister says, you are the most consistent person I know. I say, you don't just teach us things, you show us. We say, we love you, Grandma. You say, I love you all too. Now turn that thing off. Grandma J's the reason why I sing the way I do. The steady organ hum under a deacon's prayer. I hum never would have made it to the sweet potatoes in my new kitchen pot, hoping they taste like hers. She used to hold my hand when we sang it. Grandma of LaSalle, Grandma of the usher board, Grandma knowing every word loudest in the pew. My favorite story to tell is the one where you are 5 years old and you're riding your horse, Molly, through a cornfield on the way to somebody's house. It's late at night or early in the morning and you fall asleep on the horse and slide off. By some miracle, the horse doesn't trip over you or trample you. She gets down on her knees and bends her neck down so you can reach up, grab onto her mane, and climb back on. Every time I hear this story, I think, wow, that horse loved you. It feels like the beginning of a movie about a little black girl who speaks to horses, who saves her family from some great threat using this special power. I'm a crate digger, thumbing through her old records. Who would I be without my shovel? What would my voice sound like? Where would my gravity come from? Cooking with grandma's recipes will never taste the same, but one day my grandchildren may taste what I made and call it the original. They won't know any better. I keep asking you to tell me stories about Arkansas, about your childhood, because I am in awe of how many lives one person can live in one lifetime. You were a bank teller, a meter maid, an usher board member, a caretaker for five grandchildren, a postal worker who hid a bottle of liquor in your boot and played bid whist with coworkers, a restaurant owner in Mississippi with granddaddy. When I was born, you shuttered its doors and drove up north to be my grandmother. I'm so honored that you chose co parenting me as one of your many lives. I can't help that you're my muse, that every river in me runs back to you. Poetry is all about economy and fit. I've been writing the same poem over and over again in different words. I love you. I love you. I love you. Wow. What a beautiful ode to a grandmother. If your grandmothers are still alive today, my goodness, please keep in touch, contact them, talk to them, call. Both of my grandmothers have passed on, and I miss them and think about them quite a bit. Quite a bit. All right, let's dive in a little bit to I Can't Wait to Call You My Wife. Against the backdrop of bloody battles and political maneuvering, thousands of African Americans spent the Civil War trying to hold their families together. Whether enslaved or free, they strove not only to survive, but also to cultivate bonds of family, friendship, and community. This moving book illuminates that struggle through the letters exchanged by African Americans before, during, and just after the war. Despite harsh laws against literacy and brutal practices that broke apart black families, people found ways to right each other against all odds. Their letters reveal humanity's ability to endure extraordinary hardship. In these pages, readers will meet parents who are losing hope of ever seeing their children again, a husband who walks 15 miles to visit his wife, enslaved on a different plantation. The collection also includes tender courtship letters exchanged between Lewis Henry Douglass and Helen Amelia Loan, both children of the noted abolitionist, and letters sent home by the young women who traveled south to teach literacy to escaped slaves. The stories in these pages challenge the notion of a monolithic black experience during the Civil War era. Thanks to Robert's expert curation, readers may follow the fates of individuals and families while seeing a wider historical context. The transcriptions are accompanied by reproductions of original letters and photographs of the letter writers. This book honors long ignored voices and invites readers to engage viscerally and personally with the Black historical experience. And this is the person who has put this together. Her name is Rita Roberts. She's a writer and historian currently transitioning to retirement, where she was the professor of history and Africana studies at Scripps College. She is probably retired now. And seeing as all the stuff that's going on, unfortunately, she probably made it out just in time. Prologue. So let's take a look at this. This is an actual map, and I think this is Fredericksburg, Virginia. This is an actual map of the soldiering routes. And if I look a little bit closer, I could probably tell you whether this is, yeah, this is Virginia. Fredericksburg, Virginia, which I've actually been to. So you've got Kelly's Ford up here. You have uh, church that is noted, several churches that's noted. Shady Grove, Hartwood, Richardsville is showing Falmouth, Virginia, Chancellorsville, Virginia, Spotsylvania. I've been through there. And then Fredericksburg and Richmond to this side over here. The prologue. On Friday morning, April 18th, 1862, 24-year-old Virginia enslaved John M. Washington woke up to the welcome sounds of gunfire. The Union Army was only a mile away upriver and moving steadily toward Fredericksburg, his hometown. Now it would only be a matter of time, but he had to plan his escape carefully. There could be no misstep, and no white person must suspect. A hired out enslaved person working at the Shakespeare Hotel as both steward and barkeeper, John had to keep his employers and his widowed slave owner completely in the dark. They all must believe that he would follow their orders explicitly. One employer, now an officer for the 30th Virginia Confederate Infantry, told John to accompany him on his assignment in North Carolina as his servant, while Miss Taliaferro, his slave owner, told John to flee with her to the countryside, away from the encroaching Yankee soldiers. This Friday morning, the hotel was in an absolute frenzy. Boarders were crowded in the dining room, while a rebel cavalryman started shouting, "The Yankees is in Falmouth," a city only a mile from Fredericksburg. As whites ran frantically about in the streets, gathering up their belongings to flee the city, blacks stood on the rooftops, watching gleefully for Union soldiers. Hurriedly leaving their hotel, John's employers gave him a roll of banknotes, telling him to pay off the servants, close the hotel, and take the keys to a safe place. John followed these instructions diligently, but instead of catching up with his employer on his way to North Carolina or escaping with his slave owner to the countryside, John, his cousin, and a friend fled north 1 mile to the Union line, encamped on the other side of the Rappahannock River, a river he knew well. He had fond memories of fishing in its waters and playing on its banks with other children, while his slave owner believed he was in church. And most importantly, John Washington had been baptized in that very river only 7 years before. Now, just across the river had symbolized degrees of freedom, lay real, actual freedom, the freedom he had sought since childhood. So when a few Union soldiers yelled across, asking if John and his companions wanted to cross, they responded without hesitation. Within minutes, he and the others were free. They were safe, never to be owned by anyone again. Relying mostly upon the correspondence of ordinary individuals like John Washington, this book allows those whose voices that have been largely muted to speak their truth. Though mainly enslaved until 1865, people of African descent lived complex, diverse, and yes, at times rich, but incredibly confined lives in all the regions of the United States. In the years between the 1840s and 1870s, African American letters provide a glimpse of just how complicated and diverse the Black American experience had come to be. Indeed, this diversity has too often been ignored. The letters disabuse us of imagining this one dimensional Black experience, although they show us that African Americans did share one common element: family. Family was central to African Americans, whether enslaved or free, and sustained resistance to family separation was integral to the formation of family and community. So don't let anybody tell you that we didn't fight for our family units, or that um, some of the things that we're seeing now is a result of us just not having an understanding of family unit, as these letters are going to show. When we read closely, letters tell stories. Although the majority of Black people could not read or write until after the Civil War, we are still able to learn much of African American life from the letters that survive today. We come to know children, young adults, mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers who worked, loved, married, worshiped, fought, resisted, protested, and created communities. The stories embedded in the letters reveal how enslaved, free, and freed people of African descent found meaning, purpose, and even joy in their individual and collective lives. It is an important part of the American story and fills the gaps in our understanding of the American past. To quote historian Lawrence Levine regarding Black culture, even in the midst of the brutalities and injustices of antebellum and postbellum racial systems, Black men and women were able to find the means to sustain a far greater degree of self pride and group cohesion than the system they lived under ever intended. And I might have to type that up and put it in a post today. Many African Americans lived full lives with substance and meaning in spite of postscriptions. Rather than merely react to slavery and racism, They organized their lives as best they could around family and community. Like other Americans, they loved, they worked, and developed friendships within community. Their stories are uniquely American and often universally human. Their letters tell these stories in their own words, mostly in conversations with one another during the greatest crisis the United States has ever known. And unfortunately, I think we're on the verge of the second greatest crisis. African Americans cultivated family amidst a precarious existence. As historian James Oakes reminds us, pre Civil War Southern laws disavowed families of the enslaved. The enslaved had no formal powers to exercise over anyone else. They were utterly powerless. They could make none of the commonplace claims on family and community for economic support or physical protection. To support the financial interests of the slave-holding society and all who benefited from slavery, slavery legally meant, listen to this, slavery legally meant kinlessness. So when people keep saying things like, I don't understand, why can't we just all get together? Slavery legally meant kinlessness. Enslaved men, women, and children had no wives, no husbands. That much is always thought of. But here's the other one, no parents. And I don't think people dive into that enough. That during enslavement, no child could actually claim normally establish their ties to a larger society. Thus, when John Washington explains in a letter to his fiancée Annie Gordon in late 1861 that I just want someone to call wife, he addresses what Oakes calls the heart of what it means to be human in most societies. In expressing not only his desire to marry, to have a wife, Washington also reveals his desire to be free of a system that denies his sense of personhood, that denies his legal right to be a husband in the 19th century sense of that word, to be a provider and a protector. It is in this sense that John Washington's yearning for a wife reflects the values of the majority of the enslaved in the United States. So much so that, in spite of the laws, most enslaved adults married without a legal sanction, regarded their precarious union as permanent, and tried to establish monogamous relationships as far as was possible. Now, to me, this is so powerful because being in a system where your person, your body did not belong to you, and it could, especially in the case of women, belong to several owners to be passed around, to be bred, right? To be living in that context and not being able to get out of that context, but to then say, even through all that I've been through, I want the right to establish my own monogamous relationship, one man with one woman, lets us know that some of the stuff that we see present day that we're trying to push as, oh, this is how we would have been doing it anyway. No, the historical record shows us that our people wanted to be in a monogamous relationship with another person. They didn't want to be in multiple relationships or passed around. That was not our culture. That was a tool of the system. Enslaved people consistently challenged the notion that they were kinless and tried to keep their kin together, challenging the law that said they were more property than human beings. As we will see, slave owners recognized enslaved kin when it suited their interest. This recognition did not translate to legitimization of enslaved spouses and families. The letters reveal how protest as well as family was embedded in the formation of African American culture, family and community overtly among northern free blacks and covertly among the enslaved and southern free blacks. This book focuses on African American private lives. The few private letters extant among family members reveal the most about the diversity of African American thought. Some letters written to relatives discuss ordinary family matters, telling of personal health, material or educational achievements or losses, and how to manage particular situations, while others reflect intimate expressions of love. This book is divided into three parts. Each part corresponds roughly with the decades of the Civil War era so that the reader is able to grasp the impact that particular moments had on African Americans leading up to the war, during the war, and following the war. Fortunately, in a few cases, we can observe a few individual and family experiences throughout the entire era. Each part begins with a brief introduction that provides context for the letters, explaining the relevant political and social events of the period. In addition, each chapter includes descriptions of the letters and their writers. While I have kept the political, economic, and social context to a minimum so that the letters speak for themselves, the reader may desire to skip directly to the letters and read the information later. I've mostly avoided using the term sick after errors in order to avoid disrupting the flow. I've made only minor corrections to the punctuation, spelling, and grammar, except when necessary for clarity. It's important to note that there was no standardized spelling and punctuation at the time. Thus, misspelled words and erratic punctuation were common among writers of all classes. Also, African American writers followed the writing customs of the time. Many used traditional epistolary frameworks. Letter writing guides proliferated in the mid 19th century to help writers learn the proper format. Guides provided templates that taught the writer how to begin the letter and what to include. Writers were taught to write the salutation, to date their letter, and include the place from which they were writing. By the way, these are things we should still be teaching in schools, but a lot of people are no longer teaching the art of letter writing, but they should still teach it. Instructions also encourage writers to describe their own state of health and inquire about the health of the recipient. All of this before explaining the reason for writing. For example, Dear Blank, I take this opportunity to write you a few lines to let you know that I am well. In following conventional American letter writing customs, African American writers revealed they were part of the American experience, although the content of their letters usually distanced them from white writers. The letters in this book provide an expanded understanding of the meaning of the American experience. We come to realize not only that there is no one American experience, but also that individuals who are placed within our ethnic and racial groupings represent much more diverse and complex lives than we have generally acknowledged. Mm, 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 mm. And because we're coming back to this book tomorrow, I want to show you some of the text writing. And there's been a debate about should we be teaching cursive to children? Should children be learning how to write in cursive? I teach cursive to um, students who want it. I help parents to find material and resources because those, believe it or not, those are dwindling. There used to be a lot of books on cursive writing and how to write in cursive with, the student being able to trace and all of that. But those types of books are dwindling in the market. So you do have to like seek them out. They used to carry some even at the Dollar Tree, but I haven't seen any lately. But I feel that teaching students how to write in cursive and how to read cursive is very important. Why? Because our historical documents are written in cursive. And there are several projects going on right now where they need volunteers who can actually read cursive and who can translate that cursive into typed text. But if we have a generation that can't read cursive and can't write cursive, they're going to have a hard time reading original historical documents. I mean, to me, that's one reason why students should be learning how to write in cursive and how to read cursive. This says here, memory was given to man for some wise purpose. The past is the mirror in which we may discern the dim outlines of the future and by which we make them more symmetrical. And that was written by Frederick Douglass in 1884. So I'm going to stop here. We just kind of read the introduction. Tomorrow we're going to continue on and we're going to look at John Washington's letter and what was the context around his letter that he is writing. She's got some amazing pictures in here that we're going to take a look at. And I'm excited about reading and learning even the more. All right, I'm going to stop here with our reading portion, and we are going to move into our talk back about what we've read so far. I want to thank you for your time and attention. I hope you've enjoyed at least learning some of the history and listening to these stories. Again, I think because of what is happening in this month, I think it's more important for us to dive into our history, to dig into real stories, to learn about how our ancestors, how our elders made it through challenging times. And I feel like these two books are certainly going to do that, help us to understand, but also give us some encouragement along the way. I want to thank you again for your time and attention. This has been another episode of Daring Dialogues, and I've been your host today, Shantae Charles. Remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness, so continue to go out and be light. Again, you can catch us on the talkback over at Instagram at Daring Dialogues. Thank you so much. Be well and be light. All right.